School Owners. We'll start with Miss Benita Swann. You're on mute, sweetie.
Greetings. Hello, everyone. I'm Benita Swann, and I'm with the Swann School Business Owner in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area. My passion is working with young adults and business professionals and helping them to maneuver and navigate through the social and professional settings. Thank you.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nikisha Tannehill. I am a Swann School owner in Shreveport, Louisiana. I enjoy working with young adults as well as business professionals to make sure that they're polished, to make sure that they're comfortable in any social setting, and also just to make sure that they're presenting their best selves at all times. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miss Smothers, and I live in the New York City area. My target audience is usually the tweens to high school graduates to college students. I want to make sure that as our children enter into these different major areas of their lives, that they are polished and have an advantage with being their best selves.
Hello. My name is Michelle Burke. I am from Encinitas, California, San Diego, SoCal, and I work with young adults and athletes, giving them a sense to be bold, adventurous, with a respectful and kind heart.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for logging in. My name is Desiree Hunter. I'm the proud operator of the Swann School of Protocol here in Beverly Hills, California, serving this area and then also the LA area. And I'm passionate about etiquette for all ages. I primarily, though, focus on helping young adults transition from high school to college and then from college into their professional lives. And especially now with everything going on, I'm looking forward to helping businesses and corporations navigate from COVID, and then also just community service, customer service, as well as navigating these issues around race and diversity.
Good evening, everyone. I am Lynette Lil Walcott, serving the Jacksonville, Florida, and surrounding areas. My target, being a Swann School owner, would be women in transition, as well as business professionals, corporations, organizations, and really just assisting them in transforming their professional and personal development. I'm also passionate about elementary and middle school age, really going in and help them build confidence and self-esteem and really nurturing the culture of honor that I feel has been kind of dwindled in our society. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Simona Austin, and I am in the greater Maryland DMV area. And my specialty is career-changing professionals, those transitioning from one life sector into the next. My goal is to help people identify and maximize their potential. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tisa Thompson, and I'm located in the San Francisco Bay Area. My primary focus are on young adults and business professionals, and I wholeheartedly believe that good manners will take you around the world. Thank you.
Sandra, you're on mute.
Hi, I'm Sandra Scott, Swann School owner from the Denver, Colorado area. My area of emphasis is business professionals, athletes, and customer service professionals who want to address all types of etiquette issues within their company.
Thank you so much. Those are our Swann School owners. Tonight's topic will be Beyond Lip Service, Meaningful Conversations with Impact, how to navigate difficult but necessary conversations regarding racism. And with that, we will have Ms. Swann kick it off and describe the topic and what it means to her.
All right, very good. Well, once again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is really phenomenal, the fact that so many of you have decided to join us. I want to first start off by saying thank you to the entire team at Swann HQ. Everyone has worked diligently to make this event happen. But more importantly, I'd like to thank all of the Swann School owners who are participating in this event. We're really thrilled to have 20 independently owned and operated Swann schools throughout the country. And each of these individuals are poised and ready to help you and your organization to navigate this trying time here in our country. When we say trying time, what in the world does that mean? Well, you know, we were all sitting down thinking that we were quarantining for quite some time. We were hunkered down. We were following the guidelines of our local and national authorities. And then all of a sudden, 8 minutes and 46 seconds happened. 8 minutes and 46 seconds was the amount of time that all of us here in the country sat and watched as George Floyd died in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of the street, in the middle of our quarantine. 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we saw a police officer with his knee on his neck, and he died. And then came the protest, and then came the marches, and then came cries out for equality and humanity of treatment of people of color. A lot of us were thinking, well, you know what? We've seen this before. This is part of our story. This is part of our history as Black Americans here in this country. But then there are others who thought, well, this might be a one-time incident, or this is something that was really blown out of proportion. And others were absolutely, utterly shocked and didn't know that anything like this could take place. The truth of the matter is, racism still exists here in the United States of America. It's an ugly truth that's been part of our history, and it still is alive and true today. One thing I know for sure is not every person in America is a racist, and not every person has bias towards other people. But there are some instances where we may offend someone or may not know what's happening or may just have questions. And so that's why we're coming here together this evening, so that we can help you answer your questions, so that we can help inform you and equip you and give you tools, whether you're Black, white, green, yellow, purple, doesn't matter. We want to give everyone tools to be able to navigate this very, very difficult conversation here in America. It is an ugly fact, but the one thing I know for sure is that we have hope. We have hope in this country. We know that we can always grow and do better. I have hope knowing that we can definitely come together. I know that I have hope right now because we see so much change. We watch one after the other as different corporations and organizations took on the call to say that they wanted to do something differently. And so here at the Swann School of Protocol, we want to make sure that we're assisting you in leading that call. So often we get the question on what's appropriate in terms of conversation and how do we handle this situation without offending someone and what's the right thing to say? Well, right now you've got in front of you a host of etiquette experts. We're all poised and ready to answer your questions and again, give you some tips and tools on how to navigate this situation. We definitely have the ability to make change in our everyday lives. And so we encourage you, as you are thinking right now, if you have a question, don't let it go unanswered. There's no question that's a silly question, and Amy will give you a little bit of details on how to get your questions to us in just a moment. But sit in and listen to what these Swann School owners have to say to help us navigate this very difficult conversation in America right now. So I present to you all of the Swann School owners that are participating this evening, and they'll share their heart with you one by one. Amy?
Thank you, Ms. Swann. So for those of you who would like to submit a question, you can do so in our chat function on the bottom toolbar. Go ahead and write us the question and we will address it and make sure it gets answered. But we will also start the conversation by having our Swann School owners touch in on some popular questions, issues around this topic. So we're going to start tonight with two of our Swann School owners, Benita Swann and Selma Smothers. And as we aspire to improve conversations about racism, most people want insights on ways to effectively share their message. We will hear from Benita and Selma, who will give advice to those who want to share their story and share their heart. We'll start with Miss Benita.
Hi, Amy. Thank you. Thank you for this platform. And thank you, Elaine, for that warm introduction. So I'm about to share a story regarding the racial climate and how we can work together and work with others. So I've been in the federal government sector for 35 years. And in my organization, and after the aftermath of seeing Mr. Floyd killed on national television, my colleagues wanted to know how everyone was doing. Well, I chimed in to say I was not doing very well. I was upset about what I had seen and I was shocked. But I thank my office for the opportunity to share my voice about this horrible incident. And I explained to my colleagues, I had to do something. This should not have happened. And I wanted to bring some type of change. Well, in my organization, the FDIC, Chairman McWilliams, she supports and she ensures that the workplace is respected and valued for all our differences. And I agree, we share so many different differences and experiences, but we can learn from one another in our organizations, in our businesses. Some organizations are creating listening sessions for employees to participate, and that is one way to express your voice. On a smaller scale, like in my office, we have weekly check-ins to see how everyone's doing. And I appreciate that. I appreciate to share my voice and be transparent. Therefore, in your office, you may be able to share your feelings and your ideas and have conversations around different topics. But I believe dialogue is important, and the dialogue allows everyone to have a voice with dignity, to be present and listen with empathy, to hold the conversation in a safe place, and ask questions that are considerate while being honest and transparent in your discussions. So as allies, you can be a voice of influence within your sphere and point out those differences that make people uncomfortable. I believe it's important to speak your voice where you are most active, whether it's your business, your workplace, school, or organization. Create the dialogue, create those listening sessions, and be respectful to others, giving them the space to be authentic in their conversation. In closing, successful leaders help others to grow and feel comfortable. And every person in this world wants to have a voice with dignity. Therefore, showing etiquette and the values of consideration, honesty, and being respectful while making others feel comfortable is an important aspect to how we want to share. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Selma and let her share some of her experiences during this racial climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Benita. And I absolutely agree with Benita and the fact of our etiquette. The biggest thing we teach in etiquette is honesty, consideration, and respect. The first thing I had to do in the process was to understand that I was not okay. And it was okay for me to understand that I was not okay. But then what do I do with that? What do I do? How do I make myself okay? How do I make others okay? Because I had to realize I'm not the only one. It's not okay. With the murder of Mr. Floyd and the pandemic, it was intrinsically absolutely understandable that a lot of people were not okay. So just taking on this subject, the biggest thing for me was to let's have a dialogue. A lot of times we know that people are fearful of that they do not understand. And I believe that a lot of racism and biases and the inequalities come from the fact that we do not understand each other. So let me open up this dialogue. Let me control the narrative of this dialogue in a national arena. I want you to understand that I am not that far off from you. You don't understand me because we've never had a conversation. So in this conversation, you will learn that I'm not that much different from you. I too want to be able to go to work, make a good living. I want to spend time with my family and enjoy fun times. I believe that this dialogue is the perfect segue to societal etiquette. This is us making each other comfortable around each other and us getting to learn the different experiences, because my experience is definitely different from the experience of someone who is not Black or brown. As a baby boomer, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So I did get to experience some inequalities and indignities and biases that maybe some of you have never done. And I'm looking forward to to having my children be able to say that to their children, and then their children say that to their children, because then that means we're making progress. Because even though it seems dismal at this time, I can see that there has been progress made since I was younger. Because I remember my brothers being chased out of the neighborhood from the school that they went to because it was in a predominantly white neighborhood. My brothers absolutely from that wound up being track stars because they had to run every day. I myself was bused from my neighborhood into a gifted and talented school because we didn't have that in our neighborhood. So I was bused out. Now, my maiden name was Selma Golden. The teachers would call Selma Golden. And they're looking around the room in this whole sea of white children. And this little Black girl is raising her hand. But they were ignoring me because they did not believe that Selma Golden was me. And I was confused. I said to my mom, I said, Mom, why is it that they don't understand that I'm Selma Golden? And she explained, well, your name Selma Golden is actually very Jewish. So, you know, so that was my first, I would say that was my first experience with being different and understanding what different meant in my life. I've had workplace inequalities. I'm sitting side by side with someone. Maybe I have double the load of that person, but because that person was not Black or brown, I was paid half of what that person was paid. That being said, I tell you that I refuse to allow those indignities or bitterness, anger, hatred. I refuse to allow that to denigrate my soul and to permeate my life. That it is not a factor of what determines who I am and how I treat other people. Because not everyone is biased. Not everyone is prejudiced. And not everyone that looks different from me doesn't understand me. Some do. So let's take these fragmented pieces as we move forward. Let's take these fragmented pieces and let's make this masterpiece. In order to do that, we have to come together with acceptance and inclusion and equality for all races, for all genders, for creeds, for all colors and whatever identities there are, because we are all a myriad of differences. So in conclusion, I say, for us to move forward without ignorance, we must put behind us all those inequalities and those differences. And we need to come together in inclusiveness and in kindness. And I'm open-minded enough and wise enough to know that our progress is not just going to take my Black and brown sisters and brothers. It's going to be others that support us and that are absolutely in this fight with us. So let us understand that our forward movement is first us understanding that we have to get rid of the malice and the resentments and come together with love and kindness, inclusiveness and equality. And from that, for those of us who have been broken for so long, can heal, just as our land will heal, but we have to do it with kindness, temperance, and love. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. So the slide I'm showing right now is Benita Swann and Selma Smothers, and their topic was how to shed light on racial injustice, and they did a beautiful job helping us. Next. Excuse me. Next. Okay, the only way to significantly undo racism is by fighting it every day. Some of our country needs clarity as to what that looks like. You hear them asking, how can I help? Nikisha Tannehill and Desiree Hunter will provide insight as to what people can do every day to help fight racism. Nikisha, let's start with you.
Thank you, Amy. So there are several things that we can do, and what a wonderful question. And so we've kind of seen that the marches and the protests have kind of come to a halt, but there's so much more that needs to be done. So some ways that we can help and that others can help. 3 things I want to talk to you about today. The first one is reframing your thinking. So what does that mean? So that means to begin to think of things and people in a positive light. And so just knowing that every person of color, especially Black man, is not always what you see portrayed in the media when we see those negative images. So reframe your thinking. What is it that you think about people of color? What do you think about those men, those women, and those children whenever you see those images? And so I would encourage you to get to know people, do lots of research, and not just think and have tunnel vision about certain groups of people. And then the second thing that you can do is recognize unconscious bias. And so I'll just submit to you that we all have those biases. So as an example, let's say that you need new windshield wipers for your car, and you decide that you're going to go to an auto parts store. So there are 2 persons there that are smiling and willing and available to help you. There's a female, and then there's a male. And naturally, most of us will gravitate towards the male. Well, why do we do those kinds of things? And it would be possibly because for so long in that field, it was dominated by males. And so in our minds, subconsciously, then that's the person who is able to help me. So what about when you think about you're in the market for a new car, and you think about a salesperson? More than likely, maybe a man comes to mind, because that's in the past really who's just dominated that area. So we have those biases. We see images and things, or maybe we meet one person of color and we have an interaction with them, and we begin to think and judge everyone and think every person of color is that particular way. And so being able to look within ourselves, look at those biases, because I'll share with you that those biases serve as barriers that may keep us from connecting with other people and seeing them in that positive light. And so the third thing that we can do is to begin to start those conversations, and then even speak up when you see injustice. So how do you start the conversation? I recommend doing that in your tribe, among your friends, even in your own home. So when the news comes out, when you see something, when you see some behavior that you realize that may be racist, having those conversations within a place where you feel safe to discuss those things, and also doing a bit of research. I would really encourage families especially to begin really having those conversations with your children, asking them what their thoughts and feelings are about some of the images and things that they see, about some of the, ask them maybe perhaps who are their friends at school, and why did they choose the friends that they chose, and do all of their friends even look like them? And as we begin having those conversations and explaining things, we begin to break down some of those barriers. And so maybe for the next generation moving forward, we can have more positive thoughts, we can have more interactions, and then we can be more diverse and inclusive. I would even encourage you to have those conversations in your workplace. So if you look around and you look at your team, you look at the company, does everyone look the same? Do they all come from the same college and have the same experiences? Or is it a workplace that's diverse? And not just when it comes to skin color, but when it comes to education, when it comes to gender, even looking at people coming from different generations, so different age groups. And so it's important that we surround ourselves and really just have diverse, just practice diversity in every area of our lives. And so for those of you business professionals, if you have a hand in hiring, I would encourage you to just open up your mind and think about diversity and inclusion. And let's say there are two equally qualified applicants of diverse cultures, go with diversity. If the team is full of women and there are two equally qualified candidates and you're trying to decide who to go with, maybe choose the female instead of the male if we're looking at equally qualified applicants. And so having these conversations, whenever you see injustice, whenever you see things like that, begin to speak up. But you can do that by just simply observing and also asking very direct questions and then also expecting a response. But you can do that in such a polite way and so that you can have that conversation. Now, I would encourage that when you have those conversations, if you can do that on a one-on-one, because we want to make sure that we're not calling anyone out. And just know that when you have those conversations, it will feel awkward. But the more that you do it, you can get your point across, you can share your perspective, and it can actually become uncomfortable. So the ways that you can help, again, reframing your thinking, recognize unconscious bias, and also begin to start those conversations and to speak up. That's what you can do to help. And now we'll hear from Desiree Hunter.
All right. Well, thank you, Nikisha, for those excellent points. And one thing just to, you mentioned the implicit bias that sometimes people can have. And I do have a quick little story about that. But first off, just thank you for everybody for tuning in. And thank you for asking the question, how can I help in the first place? Because that is where we start. So my quick implicit bias, one of several, unfortunately, people of color all have multiple of these types of stories. But so I live in Beverly Hills and I went to work out at the 24-hour fitness near the house, and I was going to a spin class, and I was the only one who did look like me in the spin class. And the instructor stopped class. Well, I hadn't quite started yet, but she kind of like stopped everything and said, "Oh, excuse me, this is a spin class." And I'm like, yes, I see the bikes. I'm aware. I'm here to work out. But clearly, she did not expect someone who looked like me to be involved in this class. And something else happened where then she asked me what my name was. I told her Desiree, and she said, it's so easy to pronounce. So just a couple of things and a little examples of kind of the little microaggressions that happen. But to get started into the talk about how to help. So I've come up with an acronym to hopefully make it a little bit easier to remember. So help, the H stands for here. The E stands for educate yourself and elevate others. The L is for leap in, and the P is for phone, keep it charged. So starting off with the H, hear people of color and hear them with your heart. So we always talk about listening and how important it is to listen to people of color. But literally, I feel like people of color have been saying the same things for years and years and years. And people might be listening, but they're not hearing us. And if they do hear us, it's they might sometimes think, well, yeah, that happened, the woman with the spin class, but you know, she probably just was asking because she had never seen you before, or this or that, or kind of maybe finding ways to sort of invalidate the experiences that we are conveying. So when people of color do share these experiences, just listen to them, hear them with your heart, and believe them. Also, it is true that these conversations are going to be hard. They're going to be uncomfortable. So let's just get that on the table and accept that. There's going to be an element of discomfort with this. But the great thing about it is through that discomfort, through that pain, comes the growth. So just like that spin class afterwards, I was sore, let me tell you, I was sore. My muscles were killing me. But at the other side of that soreness, it means that I was making progress, right? It means that my muscles were growing. And that's what we want. We want that growth. We want to push through that pain, because it is true that without pain, there aren't any gains. So just know that there's going to be some discomfort, but push through it anyway, because these are very important conversations to have. Moving on to the E, educate yourself and elevate others. And so when I say educate yourself, there's so many resources, especially now, that people can turn to just to learn about some of the racial history that's occurred in our country and how we have ended up where we are today. So for people of color too, I like to recommend that they just kind of have some of these resources on tap that you can have when people ask you for suggestions. So for me, when it comes to an organization, I would like to recommend the NAACP. That's a good place to start for someone who maybe wants to volunteer or even just give donations. The New Jim Crow is a good book that kind of talks about race-related issues and about mass incarceration in our country, and how the Jim Crow laws, for those that don't know, are laws that were in the South that were meant, that basically legalized segregation. So when you see like the whites only fountain and the blacks only entrances, those were the Jim Crow laws. And this book then discusses about how those remnants of slavery really are still here in our society today. And in terms of a good documentary, I like Ava DuVernay's The 13th, which talks about the 13th Amendment, which is what abolished slavery in our country, but yet then opened the door to mass incarceration of African Americans, which we are still dealing with today, still continues today. And with the Jim Crow laws too, we think it's done, but we are still very much segregated in our day-to-day. And just like Nikisha said, I just encourage people to look around you, look around your tribes, look around your circles. How diverse are they? And if they're not very diverse, ask yourself why. And how can you expand your circles to include more people? Now to the L. The L is lean in, or leap in. And I also like to say it's no, leave lip service behind, right, for the L. So with the L, we want to talk about the action. This is where we talk about, hey, it's not enough just to say I'm not racist. We all have to actively be anti-racist. And how do we get there? We talk about the marches, that's great, and the protests, that's amazing. But how often are we having those? It's far, far more impactful to be involved in these small little moments that happen in our day-to-day lives. And those are the times where we need you to leap in. When you notice the cashier maybe didn't ask you for your ID to use your credit card, but then they asked a brown person behind you, maybe saying, hey, why didn't you ask me for my ID? Things like that, just to kind of to start calling these things out and start bringing attention, because some of these things, it might not even be conscious, but it's good. These are the things that we need to talk about, because part of it is also taking the taboo out of talking about race. We can talk about the weather, we can talk about race. It's okay. Let's bring these things out into the open and make it okay. So again, yes, every person of color has these types of stories and these types of experiences where they've been treated differently because of their skin color. And on the other side of these stories, there's another person there, right? It's so to bring up the spin instructor, I don't mean to pick on her, but to bring her up again, I tell this story, she's the other part of that story. And guess what? This is not happening in a vacuum. So that spin instructor has family, has friends, maybe has a spouse, has cousins, has people around her who might have heard her say some kinds of things or express these kinds of biases. And it's up to those folks and their responsibility to also bring those things to their attention and kind of help to push people along and have us all evolve in our way of thinking, like Nikisha said, to reframe our thinking. And then also part of leaping in is and leaving the lip services behind, holding some of these businesses accountable. You know, all these statements, everyone put out a statement. They did the Blackout Tuesday on their Insta. You know, they said, we're giving 10% of all sales today to the NAACP. Wonderful. What are you doing now? It's taken us this many years to get here, and it's not going to be just one day, 1 month, 1 week to get us out of it. So what are you doing now? If your company has put out something saying that, oh, we believe Black Lives Matter, that's wonderful. We love it. Check in with them next month. Follow up with HR. Hey, so, you know, we put out that statement, just curious, what are some of the concrete steps that we're taking as a company to really support Black lives and to really have diversity? You know, one of the companies you buy from and follow on Insta that did that statement, tag them on Insta. Say, hey, just to follow up, I did notice your 10% donation, but just curious, what are some of the other things that you're going to do? Because it's going to take all of us holding that accountability and keeping the eyes on them and continuing the conversation for us to really make it out of this. Okay, and so now P, the phone. Keep it charged. Keep these little suckers charged. So I'm really bad about this too. So many times my phone is on E, you know, but we have seen how effective having that video, having those photos, how much and how far that goes in this fight. This thing right here is a huge weapon in the fight against racism. So just remember to keep it charged, and also kind of remember to pull it out. If you see something going on, pull it out, start recording, you know, be quick to record stuff. It's not just with George Floyd, this is from time immemorial. Even when we look at the passage of the Civil Rights Act, it was those images of the marchers of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma being peacefully protesting and still having police dogs released on them, being sprayed with water hoses, being beaten down with batons. It was those images being published in newspapers across the country that really galvanized that movement and got the Civil Rights Act passed. So you don't know just how much you can help by just having your phone prepped and ready to go. All right, so just to recap, H-E-L-P, H, hear people of color and hear them with your heart. E, educate yourself and elevate others. L, leap in and leave the lip service behind. And P, your phone, keep it charged. And so I will also kind of post some of these resources in the chat box that I mentioned. And let's continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Let me put up again. That was Nikisha Tannehill and Desiree Hunter, and they were giving you some concrete advice on how to answer the question, how can you help? Next, we will have Brittany will not be joining us tonight, but we will have Michelle Burke. And with stories like George Floyd, a lot of our country is currently experiencing these aha moments. Are moments where it clicks for them and they can no longer turn a blind eye on racial injustices. The process can be emotional, and we would like to give people advice on how to make an impact for the people around them. So Michelle, if you would like to start off.
Hi, my name is Michelle Burke, and I'm from Encinitas, California. I'm repeating myself, I'm a little nervous, but for anybody that didn't hear my introduction when you first joined us today, yes, aha moments on when things became a different reality for a lot of us. So during this climate of COVID, a lot of us are at home, a little bit isolated. Some people are not having the news on all the time. People suffer from different anxieties and depressions. Maybe they don't want to have it on all the time. So people are going to experience and learn about what's happening at different times. And we kind of have to be kind in that regard and not expect everybody to be on the same page and to know exactly what's happening all at the same time. And for me, I knew that there was something afoot, something was going on. And in all honesty, someone said that they're protesting, the BLM protest is happening. And my first thought was, why is everybody mad at the Bureau of Land Management? What is going on? I mean, seriously, what is happening? So one, with acronyms, people might not know what your acronym means. So I'm really happy that Desiree shared hers and she explained exactly what each letter stood for. Thank you very much for that. And I loved how helpful that was. But sometimes we throw these little acronyms around and we expect people to know what we're talking about. And the reality is they might be sitting there not having a clue what you're talking about, and they're too embarrassed to raise their hand and ask the question because they feel like, oh, I should know this. As soon as this person walks away, I'm going to be Googling what's happening. You know, what am I missing? What part is the picture that I'm not seeing? And so that's just, you know, on our terminology and how we converse. But also, too, we have to remember that people come from much different backgrounds and things that, you know, somebody experienced being, you know, Selma's school experience was completely different than mine. I was the minority at school. I was not, you know, in an environment and that was primarily white. It wasn't. It was mixed. It was not. And we had an instance at school that wasn't very good. There was girls picking on each other and calling names and doing things that were completely inappropriate. And luckily, our principals, the teachers rounded us all up. We all of us, not just the ones doing the name calling and everybody, but even I was actually being picked on. So they rounded us all up. They put us all in a room. They had a conversation with us. They let us all know. And so we ended up walking away from that experience with a different mindset. And fast forward in high school, those girls were some of my best friends. And had that situation not happened, I probably might not have ever been friends with them because they lived somewhere else, or they were into different sports, or they weren't on the swim team, or they didn't, you know, walk the same way I went to school. And so experiences are going to happen differently, but people have to just slow down and kind of open up the conversation, that if you can see that maybe somebody is not talking to you, maybe they don't really understand what you're trying to say. So if we just kind of pause and regroup and figure out, like, just asking the simple question, do you really know what I'm talking about? You might be surprised that the answer is going to come back and they're going to admit, you know, maybe shyly, that actually, I don't know what you're talking about. And then, you know, having a voice in our community, you know, not all of us are going to be able to go do a march or do a protest or do things like that. We're going to take things on in a much smaller situation, getting out there and supporting local businesses and seeing what businesses do need help and what, how we can really have a bigger conversation on a smaller scale. So that's kind of fun, right? You know, let's go big, but be small. I'm very fortunate that I have an experience with a lot of musicians. And you want to talk about diversity? There's a whole world of diversity in the people that I am blessed to be with who are musicians. And they have their music and their tool of their actual voice to get a little bit bigger message out there. And for me, I'm not a musician. If I sang, you guys would cry. Trust me, you guys would cry. But I can clap, I can participate, I can buy tickets, I can help promote that type of thing. I know right now all the kids are going crazy because there's no school. We're trying to figure out what's happening with our athletic department. These kids are going to come back and they're all going to be a little bit on edge and a little kind of crazy just because of the climate that we're in. And then we have this other level of stress for them. So we have to figure out how to have kind, meaningful conversations with them and kind of get them prepared for like, hey, everybody might not be feeling what you're feeling. And what does that look like now? And going back into the school year is going to be completely different than any year that they've ever experienced. And just kind of taking a step back and being an ear and listening and saying and admitting like, hey, I don't know what that means. And it's okay. It's completely okay. We're all coming from things from we have different filters. And it's just what we were exposed to. And just trying to come at it a little bit softer and a little bit kinder. So thank you very much for letting me be a part of this conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing where everybody is at a couple weeks from now, and ask me anything that you'd like. Thank you for letting me participate. Amy, you're muted.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you so much, Michelle. All right, she was discussing how to make an impact using your voice. So our next speakers, we will hear from Dr. Timona Austin and Sandra Scott. The time has come for dismantling of systemic racism in our world's organizations. And that means people are going to start to be called out for racist behavior. If you are one of those people who ends up being accused of being insensitive, how should you handle the complaint? And we'll start off with Dr. Timona Austin.
All right, thank you. And I just want to thank you all for joining us and creating this safe space to have this discussion about being insensitive. So the first thing that you want to do, as some of my sister owners have said, you want to keep in mind inclusivity. You want to think and keep in mind, are you okay? Am I hearing these people? So when you have to tell someone that they are being insensitive, in whatever instance that is, when an offense has occurred against you, you want to take a moment, you want to stop, you want to breathe, and you want to ask yourself, why am I reacting or responding this way? What feelings am I having? What was it with that particular behavior that made me feel that that person was being insensitive? So you need to stand in your truth. You need to discern what that is, and then you need to speak up and you need to speak peace. And when I say speak peace, P-E-A-C-E, you want to speak peace. Okay, we all have the power to do that. You have the power of your words. So you acknowledge that person, you stand in your truth, and then you're going to speak that peace. You're going to let them know, you're going to remove the emotion from it. You're going to let them know what that behavior or perceived offense was. When you X, I took offense to that. It made me feel whatever type of way that it made you feel. And then you are going to follow up by saying, in the future, to avoid that, what I would like to happen is if you would do X. So when you do that, you were educating that person that there was an offense that was made, that they're being insensitive. You're providing them with the opportunity to take action, as some of my previous sister school owners have said. So you're allowing them to be honest in that space and holding them to be accountable for their actions now that they have awareness that they were insensitive in that moment. And when we talk about insensitivity, it's important to consider, are you standing in a place of appreciation and inclusivity? Are you actually appreciating diversity and differences? Are you feeling offended because maybe you weren't being sensitive to that person's plight and where they were coming from, to what their experience was? So those are things to keep in mind and to take into consideration when you have to inform someone that they are being insensitive. You matter, situations matter, impacts matter. The time is now. So if you see something, you want to speak up and say something, and you want to be sure to speak your piece. It is important that you protect and maintain your circle. So you have the power of choice to decide who you're allowing into your circle and who you're excluding from your circle. You all matter. You have a voice. Your voice is of value. And in order to move forward and to continue these conversations, we need to have a space, a safe space, to have these conversations. And you can only do that if you stand in your truth and you speak your piece with honesty. And Miss Sandra is going to come on and she's going to give us a timely real life example and some additional tips on how to let someone know that they are being insensitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. Well, inequalities can be with any race, genders, and colors. What I'm going to do is I have a few notes here so I don't misspeak about what happened. So I might be reading a little bit, but I want to make sure that we understand fully what happened in this situation. My example is how an important elected official effectively used the techniques that Dr. Chimona was speaking about. Last week, there was a situation in Congress where a congressman accosted a congresswoman on the stairs of the nation's capital while he was standing next to a friend of his. What happened was he put his finger in her face and called her disgusting, crazy, out of her mind, and dangerous. Then later called her out of her name. Well, she stood there. I'm sure she didn't know what to say. And I'm sure she froze. What would you do? What would you do in a situation if someone did this to you? So what she said was, "You're rude." And he said, "You're rude." I'm not sure that effectively handled the situation. What I think she should have done was waited. She should have said, "Okay, why am I reacting this way? What did he do to make me feel this way? What am I going to do to enable the situation to be better so I can get up and go to work the next day and not stay home under my covers?" So what she did was she stopped. She took a moment and grounded herself. She went home. I'm sure she went home. She went home. She thought about it. She said, "Okay, what's the most effective way? Do I need to go to his job? Do I need to talk to him? Do I talk to my friends, my coworkers?" She probably wanted to do all the above, but what she did was she wrote it down. She wrote down how she felt and what she was feeling in that situation. I think she decided in her head, this is not the appropriate time to respond. So here I am looking at my notes. I want to make sure that I stated exactly what she said. So I'm going to take a look here. She specifically responded to what he said. He had negative behavior, dehumanizing language, and she wanted to make sure that he never continued this abuse by men in her workplace. The way she identified the problem and addressed the issue was she came back the next day. She passionately explained how she felt. This was a cultural issue. She wanted him to know his language was dehumanizing, disrespectful, and it actually gave other men in his position the permission to act in this type of way, to perpetuate violence against women. She didn't agree with that, so she wanted him to know. Well, just like Dr. Chimona said, she needed to address what should happen in the future. She thought to herself, reading what happened, she said, "You know what? I can't allow this type of action to be perpetuated against girls, sisters, mother, in the future by men or any position, any man of privilege in that position. I want you to treat them with respect and dignity." Well, like Dr. Chimona said again, she stood in her truth. She stood in her peace into existence. That's exactly what she did. She did what she needed to do. She used the best venue that she could think of. I don't think in her office or in his office would have been the same type of effect. Doing it in front of Congress, in front of everyone that he knew, in front of everyone that she knew, all her constituents, that had the most effect on what could happen. And what she did do, the way she did it with tact, poise, and diplomacy. She also eloquently empowered women and girls to speak up and out against injustice to themselves and others. But as we sit here and we think about what happened, was everything addressed? Is there another person that could have handled or talked to this gentleman? I think it was the gentleman that was standing next to him, his fellow congressman. He could have said, you know, guy, friend, my pal, I'm not sure that was appropriate. He shouldn't have done it right then, but he could have went into his office and said, not a good idea. That wasn't something that should have been done. I need to talk to you about that. We need to make sure that we don't do that in public or behind the scenes. So in essence, the point here is we all need to make a change. If you see something, say something. Something beyond lip service. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me pull up my screen. Excuse me, guys. Okay, so that was Dr. Timona Austin and Saunders Scott, and they were helping us how to go about informing someone when they are being insensitive. This is a topic we will further discuss with Tisa Thompson and Lynette Leocock. They will describe if you're being accused of being insensitive, how to handle it. And we'll start off with Tisa.
All right, thank you, Amy, and I thank everyone for joining us today. So if you're accused of being insensitive, the first thing you should do is ask the person, what have you done or said to make them feel insensitive? It's important to clarify exactly what you could have done, because if we don't understand exactly what we said or what was done, we don't have any clarification of what's being done. And so there is some instances that I know of as being a supervisor, a lot of people don't speak up for themselves. So things will just go as unknown. I had one young lady who stated, African American, who stated that another employee told her that they could hide a lot of things in her hair, which was very insensitive. But if you don't speak up about these things, the person who says this, they don't feel like they're doing anything wrong, and they're just saying something and thinking think it's funny. And at the time it was not. So as her supervisor, I had to reach out to the person because now it's an HR issue. So I had to reach out to the person so we could have a discussion about what was said, so they could have a better discussion. And later they went and apologized to this young lady and they had a conversation. And during that conversation, they tended to understand exactly what it was that made it feel so insensitive to her. But if we don't have these talks, as everyone is saying, and the communication is just left blankly sitting there, things will not get better. We all come from different backgrounds and we have different understandings of things. And so when you're being insensitive and someone accuses you of this, you get offensive and you put up your defensive mechanism. But that's not what you should do. You should listen. You need to find out and understand exactly what this person is telling you. So as Timona said, it's speaking in their truth. So you may feel that you didn't do anything to hurt this person or it wasn't insensitive because you didn't have an understanding and it was funny to you. But at the time, it made this person feel humiliated and like they was less than. So no, we need to visit these actions. We need to visit these actions, and we all need to, like they gave us all these health research tips, we need to use these in order to make our communication better, as well as understand each other, because we don't understand each other, and that's what's going on in the world today. So being accused and feeling that you're being insensitive to this person, you really need to listen and enhance what they are saying to you. Take it in, go back and research it if you have to. Don't answer right at that moment, because you never know what your answer may be. And you don't know if you are being insensitive at that moment, because our behaviors are different. And as I said, our cultural backgrounds are different. So what you interpret on your end can be highly interpreted differently on another person's end. And so this will lead to processing this information. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Lynette, but that's where we'll lead, is listening to the person. Do not get defensive, because you may have been insensitive to this person. And so the next thing is to process it. And I will move it over to Lynette.
Thank you, Tisa. I am Lynette Lil Walcott. And on the matter of, as she said, being insensitive, I'm going to come from the approach of, first we have to take responsibility. In taking responsibility, we need to check ourselves and check what we're feeling in the conversation that we're having. Because like Tisa said, a lot of times you don't know, where that person is coming from, or even where you're coming from. So taking responsibility and checking where you're at, checking what you're feeling, to me is one of the first steps of, when someone approaches you, you say, oh, well, I didn't like the way you said that, or I don't like the way you did that. A lot of times first we can take a defense. Well, I don't think you understood what I meant, or, or maybe you thought it was this way. But if you really step back and, feel, where are they coming from, then that will aid in the conversation. And so when you check yourself, I use a green light, red light, yellow light process in communication. And you can go back and forth. Now you ask yourself, am I really having a conversation right now? Or is this turned into an argument? Or am I debating? But we really want to have a conversation that is going to lead to, that person feel like they were respected and honored in your, in your presence, that you heard them. Whether you guys come to a end result or not, they should feel like, at least this person listened to me. And so in that red light, green light, and yellow light, you would start with the green light zone. In the green light zone, the conversation is flowing, you guys feel connected, and it's just easy, it's open conversation. And then you might start feeling a little, you was green, now you feel a little yellow. When you feel a little yellow, that's when you're feeling a little confused, like, wait a minute, what did I hear? You feel a little anxious, and you got some anxiety going on, and you feel like a self-attack. You start taking things personal instead of just having a conversation. And then you can move to the red, and you go to the red, it's this total shutdown. You've heard nothing else, conversation over. All you heard was that one last thing the person said 15 minutes ago, and you'll get to know resolve in listen to things that way. So in the process of communication, in the process of having a dialogue, the first thing, you got to take that responsibility. You got to say, where am I at in this conversation when things begin to shift? I know for me, I have a lot of friends, different ethnicities, because I grew up military child, also have a very strong, church background. My father's pastor. So for me, it was just, everything was just, you just love, you love, you know what I'm saying? And not to say that's wrong, we are supposed to love, but at the same time, we can use that love as a covering for things that are really going on and not dealing with stuff. And so for me, it was something that, I just loved. I had friends, red, green, black, blue, we all just loved, growing up and maturing, I did go through some things, where people, they was talking about, I would go for a job and they was talking about my dialect or whatever, and they think that, I'm a white woman just because of the way I talk. And I come in, they're like, oh, Miss, at the time, Miss Jenkins or Miss Lil Walcott, like they're surprised to see that I'm not white, but, things like that, or talking about my hair. But for the most part, my heart, my background has just been, you just love everybody. And even with my children, I have 7 children, and, I've kind of fostered that in them as well. We just love and respect, and And this, this incident had made me really have to sit back and see, especially my youngest daughter, that they are all, going through different phases. They're different generations, they're dealing with things that I did not deal with, you know what I mean, when I was younger. And so when they come and they're like, upset about what's going on, and they're, I'm upset, but I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to do this, what we're going to do about it. For me, we're going to pray and we're going to love. They're like, wait, hold up. You know what I'm saying? I want to go and I want to do this, and I want to go and I want to make my voice be heard. You know what I'm saying? I could have took the route of, still, with, hey, we just love, but I really had to sit back and process and see, where are they coming from? Not to say that it didn't bother me or affect me in any way, but where are they coming from? What are they dealing with today that I really need to sit down and hear and listen and process and help them navigate through this, so it doesn't build even more of a bitterness, more of an anger, more of a separation. If I'm truly indeed saying love, like we're saying beyond lip service, even me, I have to take responsibility and process that and sit down with them and talk them through it, and even give them actions that's going to help them get through the situation. And then when we are processing, we always want to validate, like I said, sit down with them, talk to them. When they tell me something, or you're in a conversation with somebody else, you come back with the conversation. Oh, so you said this, this is what you meant, so that you understand that you're hearing it in the tone that they're saying, and it's not being construed any kind of other way, and that you are understanding what they're saying. I mean, I like that I have, like I said, different friends, white friends or whatever, they'll call me like, when a Black person says such and such, what does this mean? You know what I mean? Things like that. You know what I'm saying? And not taking offense, because we have this open flow of conversation. But like you said, when we, like Desiree said, when we make that conversation such a taboo, like, oh my God, did you just really say that? Oh my God, did they just really ask me that? That's it. That's where we continue in the divide. That's where people then back up, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have asked that. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But even that, we need to welcome the conversation and not take such an offense. If somebody's asking you a question, let's first be like, okay, well, maybe they really want to know, and not that they're, trying to poke, or maybe they really want to know. Let me fill this out, before taking an offense or making somebody back up, and now they just don't want to talk about it at all. And then when we're talking, our end result should always be consideration. Consideration, it should be respect, it should be honor and kindness. Regardless of a conversation, a person should always leave us feeling like they were considered in the conversation, they were respected, we showed them honor, and we showed them kindness. That way, they can continue. If it's not with us, they can go to somebody else. But like I said, if we're blocking and we're taking everything like in an offense, or that it's a self, then now we shut down the conversation, where we're trying to open it up. We're trying to heal a racial divide. And we may not come to a final solution. However, when we do engage in these hard conversations, that is what is going to heal the divide. That is what is going to, bring understanding and bring knowledge, because that's what we want to do. We want to get understanding. We want to get knowledge. We want to embrace, but we have to, make sure that we are taking responsibility in every conversation that we have. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy Hart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope we provided some strategies to help our audience. We do have a little bit of time left for questions, and I grabbed some questions that we have. So one of our audience members asked, tips for having a dialogue during a pandemic. Ladies, feel free to, if anybody would like to, our audience member was asking for tips on having these conversations during a pandemic.
I think this is Dr. Timona in the Maryland DMV area speaking now. I would say that a tip for continuing these conversations, step one is you're here with us today. So again, thank you for that. There are many seminars, webinars, virtual platforms that you continue to have this conversation on. You can reach out to individuals that you know. You can reach out to organizations. So there's really no wrong way to continue the conversation as long as you come from a space of being genuine and honest with yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to?
Yes, I also agree with Dr. Austin about the virtual platforms. Adobe platform, the MS Team platform. Many of the agencies are using the virtual platforms to communicate and social distance. But in the event that you plan to meet individually, you want to keep in agreement with doing the CDC with the social distancing and the mask. So, and not having more than the limit number of people to meet with. So there's still different opportunities for us to communicate and practice social distancing. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, one of our audience members would like to know the difference between racism and discrimination. Does anybody want to elaborate? Any of our Swann School owners?
This is Selma. I'm chiming in. There's really not a big difference between racism and discrimination because, well, put it to you like this. Racism deals more with color. You know, whether you're Black, you're African American, you're Italian, you're Jewish, you know, those are racist. Discrimination can be gender, it can be identities. We've got the LGBTQ community now going on. We've got a whole bunch of the gender fluid, you know, so we've got all of those. Race really does kind of deal with the ethnicity, your origin. However, it's all hurtful. It's all harmful. One of the things I did want to point out too when I was speaking is that I want to say that I am Black and I'm proud, but my Blackness, me living in my truth of Blackness and celebrating my pride of Blackness is not to the detriment of other races or ethnicities. My Blackness and my pride and my truth should not overshadow or oppress anyone else. And so when it comes to racism, discrimination, hurtful, and it's all something that we must practice to not perpetuate. And yeah, there's things that we need to intrinsically look into ourselves and figure out that, you know, what are we doing to continue it, or what are we doing to put it into it? I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much, Selma. All right, and we have another one. It says, my question is, how do we deal with with racial microaggressions when dating interracially? Any of our owners?
This is Desiree. I'll take this one just because I do a lot with dating etiquette. But I did have a quick question for Amanda. Is she talking about microaggressions from her partner or from just people who see them together as an interracial couple? So Amanda, do you mind clarifying?
You know, it's really from who I'm dating. My name is Amanda, and, you know, it's a guy who I'm dating, and he'll make little comments such as like, oh, well, your parents are smart, at least you don't have a ghetto name, or, you know, just things like that. And it's not even just him, it's just with people in general when I'm dating, you know, it's just racial microaggressions. I'm sorry, Nikisha, your face is cracking me up. But yeah, I just want to know, how do I deal with that? I'm going back to mute, sorry.
Okay, no, great. Thank you for asking that question. So my knee-jerk reaction is that that's not a person that I would date. But I know that that's not an easy, you know, I can't really make that blanket statement without, you know, knowing more. And as someone who also does quite a bit of interracial dating, I understand there's a lot of things that come up with that. And so in this particular case, I would just come from a place of feeling. Let this person know how those kinds of statements make you feel. And also this does seem to be a consistent thing. And it's funny because Nikisha and I had a little discussion about this exact thing earlier today, where people would say, you know what, it's true. That there's a lot of racism that can go on just based on someone's name if you have more of an ethnic sounding name. And so that's why Black parents shouldn't give these names to their kids. But really, is that really the solution? Or is the solution that Black sounding names should just be names? Is the solution really that I should see someone's name and just think, oh, okay, you know what I mean? The problem is when we put negative connotations on these names, just like the problem is when you put a negative connotation on the fact that I'm Black. That's why we don't really subscribe to the whole colorblind thing, because no, I'm very much Black. However, that should not make any difference. Me being Black should not have anything negative attached to that. And so the problem is then, so sorry, a little digression. So let me go back to your question. So in terms of how to handle this. So yes, I would come to him with a place of feeling. I would say maybe something like, you know, babe, I really enjoy spending this time with you. I really enjoy our time together. Yet when you say things about my name, or when you say things about Black people in general, it makes me feel bad. You know, it makes me feel sad, and it maybe makes me feel like you are not understanding where I'm coming from. And hopefully it is a relationship where you guys can have these kind of open conversations. Now, if this is happening with someone early on, like on a first date, which it has happened several times to me. So I've had a lot of first and last dates. So then that's when I would say maybe part of the vetting process, this is not a person I would want to continue seeing. But if this is a person who has a lot of other good qualities, who you feel like this is someone you can educate and who will take your feelings into consideration and actively work to change his views, then I would say go for it. And I hope that was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, lastly, we have, what are some hurtful things that well-meaning Caucasians do to people of color? Is there anything that you guys can, okay, Nikisha?
Well, I can take that one. So some of the hurtful things is when we're all placed in the same category, or you presume what you see on, let's say, reality television or YouTube videos. And so you look at that and think that there's a certain way you should engage, you know, all persons of color or any group of people by what you see. So as an example, you just presume that people of color, let's say they only listen to rap music, or when you approach them, the greeting is maybe you give them dap instead of a handshake. Things like that, or even mentioning, as Desiree mentioned, how the spin instructor just was shocked that, you know, she had a simple name. But even just, and I think someone made the comment, I think it was Lynette made the comment that, you know, if you're Black, that you don't speak well and use good grammar. So those things have happened. I get that all of the time. Where are you from? Or are you biracial? Or do you think you're white? You know, because of the way that I present myself and because of the way, you know, that I speak, and just making those assumptions, and instead of maybe being more observant of different cultures, and maybe even being more well-rounded. So, you know, not just YouTube and reality television. Do you ever look at the news personalities? When I think of the Michael Strahans, when I think of the Robin Roberts and how they present, you know, themselves and how they engage others. And so just making sure that you're not looking at one particular thing or one person and making those generalizations about all people of color because of a couple of things, you know, that you have seen. And so, and I think we would just do well to be very observant and even to just ask the right kinds of questions, and so that we can begin to learn so that we won't make those kinds of mistakes and have those assumptions and generalizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikisha.
I'd like to chime in as well, Amy, if that's okay.
Yeah.
One thing that I find offensive is when others make an attempt to strip away my positive attributes and tell me, but not you, you're not like everybody else. So that to me is offensive.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will end it with Ms. Swann's final. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I wanted to just say something, Amy.
Sure, sure.
Very briefly. There are a lot of times when I get comments about my hair and how large it is, or how natural it is. But a lot of times in those comments, I have to ask the person, we could have an appointment, we schedule some time together and we could talk about it. And I can educate you on how my hair is and, the texture of it. And we could go, a little bit further and try to get to know each other. So I have to be open and don't be defensive, as some, that may be defensive as far as those comments that do come to us sometimes.
Thank you, Benita. So Ms. Elaine Swann will end us with her final thought.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate it. We're going to hear one last time from everybody. Do we need to mute? I hear some noise in the background. Let's mute everybody, please.
Oh, sure.
That's all right. Very good. Incredible, ladies. One of the things I want to just add my voice to what the ladies have also shared, so that you all can take away just a couple of little tips here. One of the things that we do collectively as certified etiquette consultants, each one of us is a certified etiquette consultant, and we work with organizations, we work with businesses, we work with individuals from a variety of age groups, whether they're children, teens, college students, and adults. And we work with them to try to really lay a foundation for you to pull from in order to navigate these trying times. One of the things we have to think about is, let's say, for example, I like to kind of think of this from maybe an ABC method. When we're dealing with people of color, when we're dealing with Black people, and I just want to tell you all that it is perfectly fine to call us Black. It is perfectly fine to say that we are Black. That's not offensive. Some individuals prefer African American, and that's perfectly fine. But guess what? Some people are perfectly fine with being called Black. So I just want to let you all know that, let you off the hook and let you know that that's perfectly fine. It's okay. But as we're working with individuals and helping them along the way in this particular area, we can kind of look at this from kind of what I refer to as an ABC method. Number one, if you see something, and we heard this so many times tonight, but if you see something, say something. A lot of times that say something, though, can sometimes get us in trouble from the other perspective. I know we've been seeing so many instances right now, and I won't even say the name, that's the K name that people have been talking about from an individual who's saying something about, a Black person, maybe, they're Black and they're driving down their own street, or sitting in the car, parked, watching their children from their car, or going into their own home, sitting, eating their lunch and minding their own business, or maybe someone walks into your establishment or into your store, and their behavior is being displayed that maybe you feel uncomfortable with, or maybe it's a coworker that has made you feel uneasy, and you can run those feelings through another filter. And that filter can be ABC. The A is always. Is this something that always happens in every area and every aspect of life? Have I seen this before? Have I seen somebody playing with their children? Have I seen someone bird watching? Have I seen someone, as my husband was not long ago, just minding his business, sitting outside of our work area, eating his lunch, but yet the police department was called on him because the woman inside was uncomfortable with the black man sitting outside of her window and outside of their workplace having lunch. So is this something that always happens? So that's the A. So that's where you go, okay, yeah, this is something that always happens. Well, then the B that you can run this filter through is to say, okay, is what I'm watching, does this line up with my beliefs? Is this something do I believe this is wrong? If my brother, all right, and imagine if it's your brother, right, because we're all fellow brothers and sisters, do I believe that if this were my brother acting and doing this, would this be okay? You know, the other one is C, is this color? Is this a person of color? Is the person of color doing something that is always happening, and I've definitely seen this before? Do I believe that this is something that even my brother would do, and would my brother be okay with it? And if it's a person of color, and if it's a yes to all of those, then mind your business and leave that person alone, all right? That you know, we have to stop assuming that Black people are always doing something wrong. In this country, it's so unfortunate, but this mindset has been ingrained in many, many, many of us. And now is the time for us to undo that thinking. Each and every one of us on this call, each and every person that's listening to the replay of this, has the opportunity to create a shift in our environment, a shift in our country right now. Those of you who are uncomfortable talking about race and racism, now is the time that it's more than acceptable to engage in conversations, to engage in discussions, to ask those questions. Believe it or not, Black people here in this country, we are so happy to share. We're happy to share our experiences. We're happy to give you advice. We're happy to share insight so that we can all link up and walk this thing together. Because really and truly, we are all of the human race. We are all brothers and sisters in God's eyes, and we all have to dwell together in peace. So right now is the time. This should have been done a long time ago in our country, but it wasn't. So now is the time that we can make a change in our world, most especially, not only here in the United States, not only in your community, but in your home and in your workplace. We all have the privilege to speak up, and we all, as Black, white, Hispanic, every race, we all have the due diligence to bring us together as a country. I do want to make sure that you all know that we are offering courses and classes and training, all of our Swann School owners throughout the entire United States. We have a course called Managing Diversity, and this is for folks who are in management. We can sit down and work with your team and come up with the strategy that you can roll out throughout your company so that you can identify whether or not your company is exercising unknowingly racism, or if you've seen some microaggressions. So we've got Managing Diversity for those managers. We also have Closing the Racial Gap, which is really linking on to our anti-racial racism movement, putting some measures into place, whether you're in business or whether you're in, you have a nonprofit organization, or perhaps even just in your home, we can get together with you. And then of course, beyond lip service, which is what we've been talking about today, all of the different things that we can do to implement. Every single one of our Swann School owners who's on this call right now can help you. So make sure that you reach out to us. We're here to help you. We are here to assist you. Visit our website, swanschool.com, so that you can link up with each and every person. We all also have our individual links to every single Swann School owner. So with that, I'm going to let each person say their goodbye to you from their city, starting with me, myself. Well, I'll start with myself. Amy, if you can just go ahead and say your goodbye. Everyone else just chime in one right after the other, and then I'll say our last.
Would you like me to share your guys's?
Nope, you can just.
Okay. Sorry. Bye, everybody. Thanks for letting me be your host.
Thank you, Amy.
And your name?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Elaine. Thank everyone for joining us and participating in this platform.
And your name and your city, please.
Oh, I'm Benita Swann in Washington, D.C. and Maryland.
Nikisha Tannehill in Shreveport, Louisiana. Thank you all so much for allowing us to have this conversation, and thank you, Elaine and her team, for bringing us all together. Have a great evening.
Dr. Timona from Maryland, DMV area. I just want to thank you for coming to the conversation and participating and giving us some of your valuable time this evening. Thank you and have a good night.
Michelle Burke, Encinitas, California. Thank you so much for participating and letting us come to you via Zoom. Thank you.
Tisa Thompson, San Francisco Bay Area. Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate each and every one of you.
This is Sandra Scott from Denver, Colorado. Thank you again for letting us come to you and listening to what we have to say. And hopefully we'll be able to listen to you and understand what you need.
Desiree Hunter in Beverly Hills, California. Thank you to everybody to turn in, and thanks for making that pledge to help and be a part of.
Annette Lil Walcott from Jacksonville, Florida. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you for doing your part in doing more than just lip service.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna, oh, was there one more? Oh, New York, Selma. You're on mute, Selma. There we go.
Hi. Thank you all. This is Selma Smothers. I am from Brooklyn, New York. I cover the New York, New Jersey area. I just want to thank each and everyone for the time, for allowing us to come into your homes and to have this open discussion. And I want to thank Elaine for the platform, and thank you to my sisters, my Swann sisters. And I had a ball, and I hope that everyone learned a little bit of something, because that's what it's going to take. Each one of us learning a little bit from each other to get through this.
Very good. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you. We're going to ask all of the Swann School owners to please stay on the call. Other than that, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again soon. Again, please visit swanschool.com, and you can get connected to all of our Swann School owners. Have a wonderful evening. Bye. All the Swann School owners say goodbye. Just wave bye. Bye, everybody. Oh, we can unmute people, huh? Yeah. Goodbye. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Okay. Let me get our Swann School owners to stay on. Oh, man. We're still leaving, so everybody can continue saying bye. So we're gonna keep our Swann School owners on. We have almost everybody.
Bye, bye.
Yeti, 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 don't leave yet, Yeti. Yeti, take your let's see, can you come on camera, Yeti? I'm gonna see. Yeti, if you can hear me, go ahead and come on camera. I want to say hello to you. Oh, good. I'm so glad you're still there. Just waiting. Take your time, Yeti. Bye, everybody else. Swann School owners, please stay on. And we still have a few people leaving, but I'd love for Yeti to join us and just say hello to everyone. Yeti, you can go ahead and unmute. Let me unmute the unmute Yeti. And then if you're in a position to come onto camera, that would be great. I'd love to say hello to you.
Hey, I saw you.
Hi, everybody. Okay, we still have just a couple more people in there, and then we'll talk with the Swann School owners. Did we lose someone? Selma? Somebody tell Selma to come back. Okay, Sequoia's gonna put the other folks in the waiting room, except for Yeti. And let me see.
Okay, so I'm coming back.
Okay, Selma's coming back?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Sorry, Tisa and
Great ladies, great ladies.
Oh, all right, everybody. How did you do? Yeti, I want to say hello to Yeti. Huh?
We're still recording.
Oh,